Hey everyone, Bean here, welcome back to EarthBound Beginnings. Last time we did a whole bunch of grinding up in the Yucca Desert. Today we're finally going to head east of Youngtown into the swamp. And then we're going to get past the swamp and hopefully we're going to actually make some progress this time around. This guy doesn't do a very good job of stopping us. So the swamp is another little... not a dungeon, really. I guess it's just kind of a bad place where bad guys roam. It's kind of a maze. There's a bunch of enemies. It's a real pain. I'm not a fan of this area, and you'll understand why soon enough. During this first leg of the journey, we're going to be encountering enemies we're already familiar with. A lot of Ultra Barbots and Omega Saucers and such. We fought a lot of those last episode. So it's not that bad. It's nothing we can't handle. But boy howdy does this section really crank it up. Not to mention the fact that it's pretty easy to get yourself turned around and end up accidentally wandering backwards, as I did several times. Luckily none of those times have made it into the final cut, so, but, yeah, I'm not a fan. Anyways, here's a home with a trash can outside of it. Who's in the trash can? Well, Stumpy's father, of course. No real explanation as to who bullied Stumpy's dad into here, and also, gotta love that even Stumpy's dad is on the throwing shade at Stumpy train. And in the home is Pippi, our old friend from the cemetery. No real explanation as to why Pippi is all the way out here in the middle of the swamp with Stumpy's dad in the trash. But you know what? She's kind enough to fully heal us before we continue on the next leg of our journey, so, you know. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, I say. A mouth. Anyways, here's some crocodiles. We fought alligators before, but crocodiles are different because they're green. They're also different because they are much more difficult. They hit quite a bit harder. On the defensive, I give Scarves a Psychic Shield to halve the damage that she takes. Which is a good call because their base attack is 50-ish. Yeah. Yeah. Not a fan of this batch of enemies at all. And after all that grinding, too, I'm still really not doing super hot against these guys. An unfortunate crit takes out Bean. I start to realize I have to pull out all my guns if I'm going to make it out of this one. I managed to take out one crocodile, so things are looking up. But I'm still very much at the end of my rope. It really comes down to this last move. I decide to spend Stumpy's turn giving Scarves a life up cream, and Scarves' turn on the offensive. Managed to take out a crocodile, but the crocodile goes before Stumpy can heal Scarves, and Scarves is murdered. Now, if I can get this plasma beam off before the crocodile goes, I cannot do that, and I lose. Horrifically. Well, not horrifically. By, you know, I almost made it, but not quite. So that's pretty unforgiving. Edited out my journey back to Pippi's home, and now we're back in the deadly part of the swamp. Take 2. It's Kelly and the energy robot. We've seen the energy robot before, And we've seen a similar robot to Kelly. We saw Nancy back in the desert, but Kelly is a little bit tougher. In addition to having reasonably strong offense, she's also got a pretty strong defense. Also, don't be tricked by her beauty. Luckily, the energy robot is wasting its turns healing itself. You might recall that the energy robot self-destructs when it's killed, so I'm saving that guy for last, of course. Yeah, Kelly really tears into us. Even my PK beam doesn't seem to be doing much, or as much as it usually does. That's usually my go-to weapon, but it's not doing me much good here. Should I try to lower her defense maybe or something? I just decide, whatever. Let's just go for it. All offensive all the time. Oh, Stumpy didn't make it through that one, but we managed to take care of Kelly. Now it's just the energy robot, and we'll see how the team handles this one. Good old PK beam. That should be enough. It is. And we make it through, but we're pretty worse for wear. So I ultimately decide it's not worth continuing. I'm just going to warp back to Magic Ant with the Onyx hook and heal up. Thankfully, at this point in the game, going to Magic Ant is nowhere near the hassle it once was, because we can just go to Magic Ant, heal up, and then leave Magic Ant by teleporting instead of walking all the way through to Magic Ant. It's great. We still do have to go through that first leg of the swamp all over again, but that's just kind of tedious and not really that big of a deal because all those enemies are, you know, easy pickings compared to these guys, compared to these bison. On the defensive, giving Scarves a shield. Their offense doesn't seem to be as threatening to us as the crocodiles or Kelly was. They're only doing about 30 damage apiece, so that's a nice relief at least, but it's still not much of a relief. Yeah, I'm still kind of struggling through this one too. You know, I've talked in the past before about the kind of, sort of, by modern standards, or even by 90s standards, honestly, the kind of obscene difficulty curve of this game. As we get closer and closer to the end, and we're on our way to the last town, by the way, so we are getting very close to the end, but as we get closer and closer to the end, the game doesn't really let up like this. Like, it kind of stays at this pace for a while, and it honestly is not that fun, because it's, you know, I spent an hour trying to level up last episode, and it really didn't, you know, I imagine if I try to face the swamp without leveling up, imagine how much more frustrating that would have been, you know? I mean, at this point I'm 4th D slipping away from almost all encounters, certainly crocodile encounters. I know that I cannot handle the crocodiles. Yeah, I guess this is just how games were back in the day, and you just kind of had to accept it. One thing I'll say is at least the game gives you the option, a lot of options to avoid encounters you don't want to do, like the 4th D slip or running away and stuff like that. I'm just used to RPGs where you can almost certainly make it through any encounter, that, like, you're expected to be able to make it through most encounters. Maybe I'm coddled, who knows? Of course, the maze-like layout of the swamp doesn't help either. Hey, we've got 2 new enemies, the Mooks. Now this is an enemy I can actually deal with, because you see the Mooks have the unfortunate disadvantage of only using psychic attacks, and they're all very strong psychic attacks and they will mess you up, but if you get a PSI block off, they are unable to use any psychic attacks, and they are pretty much defenseless. And you know what? 2 crits doesn't hurt either. Using my life up cream so as to save my psychic points so I can continue to 4th D-slip my way out of the swamp. Scarves does not make it out of this one alive, but I decide, you know what? We're deep enough into the swamp that I think it's worth just pressing forward and hoping that I make it through. Surely we're getting close. Surely we're getting there. Please, please tell me we're almost free of these mooks and these crocodiles and these bison. Stumpy gets paralyzed during that encounter. Not great. Luckily that's a status that is cured at the end of battle automatically, so it's not a big deal, but it isn't great. Also fortunate that I picked up all those PSI stones in the monkey's cave. And also, that's a fun sentence to say. Finally, a sign. Oh, for heaven's sake. New enemies! The documentarian in me definitely wants to fight these guys and see what they're up to, but truth be told, I got to get to the next town, and I know it's right there because there's a sign. So, sorry seagulls, we'll have to fight you another day. Sure enough, LA is to the west. Fingers crossed. Oh. 3 mooks are here. I've got just enough for 1 more 4th D slip. Doesn't feel like the correct way to be playing the swamp, but I do not see any other way other than another few hours of grinding until I'm strong enough to take out the crocodiles. Anyways, we finally made it to the town of LA. Not Los Angeles, LA. Actually, I may have mentioned this before, but it's worth noting that almost all of the town names have been changed from the original Japanese version. They were all named after holidays in Japan, and then Phil Santop, the localizer, thought, oh, that's silly. I'm going to name them after US towns, so that's why you get towns like LA and Spokane and others that I can't quite think of at the moment. Podunk, which is not an actual town, but just... Anyways, that's been this episode. Next time we'll explore LA. Thanks for watching. See you next time.